Donald Miller, he's the author and creator of Storyline. He says that all stories are made up of positive and negative turns. And he defines a story turn this way. He says it's an event that takes place after which the protagonist will never be the same. He goes on to say you can think of a story turn as a doorway, and once you cross through this doorway, there's no going back. That things aren't going to be the way they used to be. For better or for worse, you are different. We all have these story turns. But the question for us becomes, what do we do with the negative ones? The ones that create so much pain in our story. So what we found in Storyline, and going through these Storyline groups, on the second week, we share our timelines, those positive and negative turns. And you're gathering for 8 weeks, so that's on the second week. And on the third week, you are together as a group discovering redemptive perspectives toward your negative turns. And we found this to be a very rewarding, very powerful exercise. Now, what we're not doing is getting together and saying, geez, how can we make this negative turn a positive? How can we make this look really good, actually? Like, boy, this really bad thing happened, but see, I'm Christian, and I walk with Jesus, so nothing really affects me. I just smile in the face of adversity, and life is all good. That's not what we're doing. That's dishonest. It's inauthentic. It's silly, and I think we can do better. But what we are doing is looking for ways in which meaning might be created out of that pain. So something meaningful that might come from that experienced pain. But in order to experience any sort of redemptive perspective, we first have to be willing to explore. To explore the uncomfortable parts of our story, the deep, dark, negative turns in our story. But I think this work is worth it. Think of the inspiring people in your life. Think of those who have inspired you most, and I'm willing to bet they are people who can articulate and even live out redemptive perspectives towards the negative turns that they have experienced. When Elsa sings out, "Let it go, this is redemptive," 4-year-olds get this. Brene Brown, some of you have heard me talk about her before, author and researcher. She talks about heroes versus people of ordinary courage, and she says, heroics is often about putting our life on the line. Ordinary courage is about putting our vulnerability on the line, and in today's world, that's pretty extraordinary. You see, I think when we're willing to put our vulnerability on the line, when we're willing to step out and share our stories, when we're willing to actually explore the parts we'd rather forget about, then we start experiencing that light. We start becoming people of deep forgiveness. And you'll start looking at yourself and you'll say, man, a year or two ago, I just couldn't imagine ever forgiving this person. But now it's strange, like this hate and anger, it doesn't define me, it doesn't consume me anymore. I don't wish ill towards this person. And I think we start becoming people of authenticity. And we'll start looking at our lives and we'll say, man, a year or two ago, I could have never shared this with them, but now it's strange. I find myself sharing pieces of my story because I actually think it might help other people, like it might be a way to stand with them and let them know that they're not alone. They're not the only ones who've experienced this. I think we actually become better storytellers. We actually become people who live better stories. But I get it. This is some of the hardest work we can engage in. Because somewhere along the way, this thing creeps in. This thing, I think, is shame. And shame starts telling us all sorts of lies. And shame, by the way, hates it when you step out and actually share your story, because shame is being dethroned, it's being exposed, and shame loves to stay on top. You see, shame tells us, don't share that with them. If you share that with them, they're not going to like you. They're going to think you're weak. Don't share that with them, because if you share that, you're not going to belong. They're not going to respect you. They're not going to look up to you. When I was a senior in high school, I received my ACT test scores, and I remember the shame. I got a 16 on my ACT. And the guidance counselor told me that this was in the bottom 10% of the state of Missouri. And she said, don't bother applying to universities. You're nowhere near what they require for the test scores. The shame. Man, I did not want people to know that. I did not want people to know how that made me feel. And shame, it causes you to tell some of the greatest lies. So what I say to my friends? Stupid test. I didn't try. Why would I try on that stupid test? You know why I did poorly? Because I didn't sleep the night before. That's why. Truth is, I did try on that test. It's what made it hurt more. Truth is, I got a good night's sleep. Shame does some really crazy, absurd things. A year later, my first year in college, when my brother was killed in a car accident, shame crept into my story. Don't let them know how you really feel. Don't let them know how you're really doing. They're not going to like you. You're not going to belong. You're not going to fit in, especially with your church crowd. Don't let them know that that faith you hold so dear is crumbling in front of you. Don't let them know that you're actually dying inside. Don't let them know that this God you once put all your faith and hope into, you are questioning everything about this God. You're not even sure if this God stuff is worth it. Don't share that. Keep it all in. It's the greatest lie shame tells us. You can do this on your own. You don't need others. And a couple of years after that, when I got married, I thought, well, surely this thing will be easy. Especially, yeah, you all laughed because you weren't as naive as me. Especially the first year. Right? This should be like getting licks from puppy dogs and walking around in fields with daffodils and daisies. And for us, it was not. We were the ones calling a counselor our first year saying, we need help. Don't let people know that. You'll look weak, especially in that first year. Pull it together. Show people that you've got it together. How does God redeem these kinds of negative turns? And I get it. Some of you are sitting saying to yourselves, yeah, but you don't really get it. Because I've been through some real crap. And in fact, right now, I'm going through some real crap. My negative turns are not just here. They're way down here. And there's no way on earth that there is any redemption in this. And if I may be so bold to say something as trite as press on, keep going in your story, because maybe redemption will look much more simple than you had imagined. Maybe redemption will look like God giving you a little bit of courage to step out and to share those negative turns with someone. Turns you thought you would never share because your shame told you to keep it in. Maybe those redemptive perspectives will be as simple as giving you the courage to say those beautiful words that we're taught not to say. I can't do it. I need help. Maybe redemptive perspectives are simple and they give us the courage to be open to the things God is calling us to be open to ways in which that pain might be brought into something meaningful, that we can do actually something meaningful with the pain we've experienced. And I don't know what that looks like for you, but I think we keep searching. Think of the story of Joseph from the book of Genesis. The last time he saw his brothers, they had beaten him to this bloody pulp. They threw him in this deep pit. And then they ultimately sold him into slavery to these Ishmaelites who were passing by, going down into Egypt. Years have passed. Joseph is in Egypt. He is now one of the most important people in all of Egypt, next to Pharaoh. Decades have passed, and his brothers are experiencing famine in the land of Israel. So they come down into Egypt, and they ask Joseph for food to take back home. But here's the thing. Joseph recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. This was Joseph's big opportunity. He could have taught them a lesson. He could have pounded them. He could have tortured them. He could have let them know what they did was wrong and taught them justice. But talk about redemptive perspectives and negative turns. Check this out. This is how Joseph responds with his encounter with his brothers. Genesis 45, 1 through 5. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Send everyone away from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him. So dismayed were they at his presence. Hint, hint, redemptive perspective coming. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come closer to me." And they came closer. He said, "I am your brother, Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life." Now, Joseph, notice, didn't say, "Well, God did this. Wasn't it so great? God just kind of beat me to a bloody pulp and then threw me in this pit and then sold me into slavery, and look at me now." He says, "No, you all did this. But while you all did all this pain, God was calling me to live a better story. What you all had thought had happened to me, be careful before you take that much credit. Because I went on with God and did something meaningful with this pain." You see, that's where I think we find redemptive perspectives towards our negative turns. We begin to do something meaningful. You know, I hated the last couple of years of my brother's life. I hated visiting him in jail. He was in and out of the county jail. I hated the smell of the place. I hated the orange suits, and I hated walking out because I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want them to associate me with him, even though I loved him so dearly. 2 Sundays ago, when I got home from church, I received a phone call from a family friend. And she was asking if I could go bail out her son from Arapahoe County Jail. And so Selah and I went that evening, thinking it would only be about 30 minutes or so. We were there for 3 hours. And so we had lots of time to reflect and think. And when a 4-year-old's involved, you have lots of time to wander and play silly games. And one of the games God was playing with me was this what-if game. We play it in Storyline. We get out a big whiteboard, and we just start dreaming really big with God, like, what if you did this, and I did this, and big stuff. And God says to me, what if you did prison ministry? What if you came in and did something here with these people? Now, God, I don't want to do that. I don't even like this place. I don't even like the smell of this place. It brings me back to that time, and I just don't want to do that. So I get home that night and I go to sleep, but I didn't sleep very well because I kept waking up playing what if. And then I started responding to God in my own head. Yeah, God, what if I just went in and did a little Bible study or book study? What if we did Storyline with some of the inmates. And so I woke up that morning and I texted a friend of mine who I went through Storyline with, and I'll read you the text. I'm saying this to someone, you, so I'm not tempted to ignore it due to my own fear. Woke up several times last night playing What If? What if I started a prison ministry? ... Storyline with the inmates. There, I said it. Now back to my coffee. Because it's Monday morning and coffee hour goes longer. The feeling did not go away, so a few days ago I just started getting online, looking for phone numbers. And I thought, well, maybe start with the captain of the jail. Maybe that's the best place to start. And when I found the number online, I recognized the name. I wasn't sure if it was the same person I was thinking of, but I called anyway. It turns out we knew each other. We've never met, but I know his mom quite well. And so I'm telling him this story of me being at Arapahoe County the week prior, and I start explaining Storyline and explaining this what-if game I was playing in my head. And get this. He says, Donald Miller's Storyline? I said, yeah, have you heard of it? He says, I just led a Storyline group this summer with a group of guys. Long story short, even a longer story shorter, he's putting me in touch with the chaplain of Arapahoe County, and I will keep you in the loop as to where this thing goes. But my point in telling you the story is to say God is always putting opportunities in front of us. Sometimes we say no because of fear, shame, or something else. Other times we say yes. And when we do say no, God is still gracious. God is always putting experiences in front of us. And sometimes it's years later, sometimes it's decades later, but God is good and God is gracious. Speaking of redemptive perspectives, I want to invite Laura Fry, our courageous story. There she is. Laura is our, yeah, we can clap for that. Laura is our courageous storyteller this week. 2 years ago, thank you for being here, Laura.
Oh, my pleasure.
You want to sit in the same seat?
Yes, I'll take my
All right.
seat.
2 years ago, Laura was diagnosed with MS. Something she didn't expect. This something might be that doorway we crossed through in which you could never go back. A negative turn. But this spring, she was invited to be the keynote speaker at the MS Walk here in Denver.
Yep.
With only about 10,000 plus people, right? So nothing to be nervous about.
Right, a lot of people.
So Laura, tell us, if you can, what gave you the courage to tell your story in front of 10,000 people?
I was suffering quite a bit in my own pain and just acceptance of the disease. And I looked pretty normal to a lot of people. And when I had friends that gathered around me and they said, last year, they said, let's do something with this. Let's go to the MS Walk together. So we went. And there was this girl. She was the keynote speaker last year. She was 14. And she stood on the stage and spoke about her story. And her story was just like mine. And she was struggling. She shared her struggles and her strength and her faith. She quoted the Bible. She was so brave, and she was so young. And as I left that day, I felt like her story and her strength really helped me, because she knew what it was like not to want to get out of bed, but she did. And so I leaned on her a lot. And I had a big team at the walk last year, and so the MS Society recognized that. And they asked me if I would speak. And I thought about it. I was scared. But I thought, you know what? That girl, she helped me. So if I could say something to somebody about getting through something tough, something my words might help somebody with, then I'm going to do it. So she gave me the courage.
And courage can be kind of contagious, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, so we talked about negative turns, redemptive perspectives. This was a negative turn. How have you experienced redemptive perspectives here?
Oh gosh, so many ways. I would say that I actually said this out loud the other day to somebody. I said, and I mean this, I wouldn't take away this term, this diagnosis of MS. And it's not easy, but what it's done for me, and I mean that, it's so crazy to hear, but I mean it, because it has given me this, I call them my magic glasses, and they're not my readers. I have so many of those that I can never find anywhere in my house. But these glasses help me see things differently, and MS made me sad, but God has helped me see other people. Everybody might just look just fine, but they have something going on too. So I've learned to be a more compassionate person, and I like that about me right now.
I like that too. In fact, I think part of that redeeming the negative perspective always leads us to be more compassionate.
I'll take it.
Laura's had some of her angels here this morning helping serve communion. Her and John are going to help at this service. Thank you for that, Laura. And I think communion reminds us that God is always with us. That when we take the bread and the cup, it's that simple reminder that God is with us, even in the negative turns.
Amen.
Thank you for helping us. And thank you for sharing your story.